Hey, welcome back to the channel. This video we're going to get back on the ZX7 and we're going to see if we can get those valves shimmed, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so new bearing. I'm just using this driver as a bit of a spacer, that way I can be sure that it gets pressure in the right place as I'm inserting this. These presses are wonderful things to have. Fabulous. When they come on sale, they're quite reasonably priced too. So all along the restoration process, there's going to be little jobs that, they're not exciting, they're not glamorous, but you kind of got to tackle them all in a similar way. So these are obviously turn signals, front and rear. They are OEM, I believe, turn signals. So some of these are going to have to be cleaned up a little bit, and like these metal backing plates are a bit of a mess, so they're going to have to come off and be cleaned up. And then generally speaking, like there's, these have been marked up, so they're going to have to be cleaned. And then the other thing I'm going to do is use the trusty vinyl and rubber care product from Clean Flow. This stuff takes kind of dirty, faded, dull black plastic and really puts puts the oils back into the plastic. It soaks in, and then you get a really nice original finish back on it. It's good stuff. You've seen me use it here before, I think, on this channel. So just give that a good soaking and let that soak in, and then we'll flip them over and do the other side. So I think I'm going to be on the lookout for another set of these. These are supposed to be the fronts, but they're not actually the correct ones. This part of the light is correct, but the base here is kind of too long, and it should flare out a little bit for the correct one. You can tell these are off a newer bike just from the style of the connector on them. These ones we find for the rears, but these are not correct, I don't think. So. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do before I start to pull those cams out and whatnot is I'm going to go back through and record all of the valve clearances in detail. This is a worksheet for a 6-cylinder CBX that somebody sent me, so it's you just get rid of the last 2 columns, and you can use it for any bike, or if it's 2 cylinders, just use the first 2 columns. So I'm going to use this worksheet, record all of the valve clearances, and then once I get the camshafts out and the buckets out and the shims, I can record all of that, do the calculations and whatever else, and then it'll give me the new shim values. Now, that being said, the factory shop manual has a chart in it which actually does those calculations for you. There it is. So that's there's an inlet valve, intake valve calculation sheet, and then there's an exhaust valve calculation sheet in the shop manual. So, I mean, that's kind of the easy way to do it. So I will double check my work using that for sure. But I'm going to go through, record all that. I mean, I did the basic, and when I say basic, I made sure that, if it was the could I get the minimum clearance amount in there or not? And if I could I still get the maximum clearance amount in there when I use the feeler gauges or not? I didn't go to the extent of saying, it's exactly X or exactly Y. So I'm going to go back, record all that in detail, and then set about pulling those cam caps off and the camshafts and all that good stuff. Alright, so when measuring the valve clearances, which I'm going to do again, trying to get this lined up so you can see it. there's a mark here. Okay, on this thing, it's hard to see there, but it says T on it, and then that line right where my nail is has to line up with this. So obviously, with an engine, four-cylinder engine, you're going to get top dead center there twice when you rotate that around. So once is on the compression stroke, and once will be on the exhaust stroke. So depending on which kind of rotation you're on, it'll either be number 4 or number 1 that'll be on the compression stroke. And in this case, where number 4 is on the compression stroke. So if you go to the book before you start measuring stuff, so where number 4 is at top dead center at the end of the compression stroke, inlet valve clearance of number 2 and number 4 cylinders and exhaust valve clearance of number 3 and 4 can be measured. So there's kind of the pictorial view of what you can actually measure at that point. When I cycle it again and come back to top dead center, it'll be number 1 on compression stroke, top dead center, and then I can measure these ones. So that's what I'm gonna do. I've got my, what did I do with it? Oh, for God's sake. Oh, there it is. Okay. I've got my feeler gauges, and these are the clearances for the Kawasaki. 0.15 to 0.24 on the inlet, and 0.2 to 0.29 on the exhaust. When I did the quick rudimentary check there a little while ago, all the intakes seemed to be fine. The exhausts were all a little bit tight or a lot tight. So I'm just going to go through and get an exact measurement this time, and then as I showed you before, I'm going to record everything in my trusty sheet here, and then once my bolts arrive, still haven't arrived, got all the short bolts, but I haven't got the long bolts. So they're still on the way by, I think by donkey. They're coming from the United States via UPS donkey. I have no idea why it takes this long to get them, but anyway. Okay, we'll see if I can demonstrate something for you here. So with this exhaust valve in number 1 cylinder, the clearance is so small here that I cannot get even a 0.03 millimeter gauge in there, which is the smallest one I have. So what I can do, if you can see here, let me see if I can get this zoomed in here. I can move it. I can move the shim, sorry, the bucket. I can rotate the bucket around with my finger. So what that does tell me is that there is actually no contact between the cam lobe and the bucket. So there is clearance, I just can't measure it. So it's got to be somewhere between 0.01 and 0.02. So therefore, that's the assumption I'm going to make, and I'll just have to allow for that in my calculations. The other thing I found out, I just spent the last half an hour online with Partzilla, where I ordered the longer bolts from, and when I did the checkout, it's supposed to be UPS shipping, but because I picked standard UPS shipping, apparently that means that they hand it over to Canada Post at the border and they don't bring it via UPS here. And we are in the middle of a Canada Post strike here. So I said, well, that's just wonderful. Why the heck am I paying you to ship it UPS when you're just handing it over to Canada Post? It's on strike. So all of the exhausts are not in specification. Some of them are really, really close, like the 0.2 is the smallest. So, these ones are not, totally out of whack. Actually, this one is the only one that's in spec, I think. The 0.21. One of them is in spec. The rest are all out of spec. So top dead center for 1 and 4 is set, and the camshafts, the sprockets there, you see the E, X, and the line level with the top of the head. I'm going to take this gasket off as well. And there's the intake on that side. The only thing that kind of puzzles me a little bit is that the number 4 cylinder is actually on the compression stroke here. Both 1 and 4 are top dead center, but it seems to me that this that it should be the other way around. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. The factory shop manual doesn't tell you that when the cam sprockets are facing outwards with the timing marks, that it's number 1 that should actually be on the compression stroke. In this case, it's number 4. Maybe it doesn't matter because it's wasted spark anyway. And as long as it's timed, I guess, properly as it goes back together the same way it came apart, I'm sure it will be fine. But all right, so the manual doesn't say to do this, but I'm going to do it because I'm paranoid and because my OCD kind of tells me to do things. What I'm hoping is if I mark this here like that, that should help me when I go to put this thing back in. I did wipe some stuff on there to remove the oil so that Sharpie will stay on. So yeah, that's the plan. Now that that's marked, we'll see how that actually unfolds. All right, so here goes. Step 1 is removing the tensioner, but before I do that, I think it'd be smart to remove that, or loosen this cap bolt right here, because it might be a pain in the neck to get that off once it's off the bike. So my understanding from just what I'm reading in the manual is as soon as I loosen this, it's going to start to extend the tensioner outwards. And as soon as you start loosening it, you can no longer reinstall this. You actually have to take it off and put a screwdriver inside here where this cap is, and basically wind it back in, and then you have to hold it with a tool or something like that in order to get that back in there. Cap bolt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do it the order that it would basically be for the cylinder head, and you kind of start in the middle and work your way out, and I'll go kind of back and forth from that. But so I'm using this breaker bar, just hopefully I'll get some good feel from this. All right, all the bolts are loosened, so next step is really just removing these cam caps, I guess. Keep an eye out for, just in case there's any kind of O-rings, or if there is, or location dowels or whatnot. So, that's good. There are some rubber O-rings. I'm not even going to mess with the O-rings. They're just kind of sitting over here. Let me take you over here so what we got here. So there's oil O-rings here and here. And there's a location dowel there. There's another one actually goes in there, but it's kind of stuck to the cam cap, which is fine. All the bearing surfaces look okay. There's nothing concerning to me in there at all. See how easy or not this is to get out. Alright, so just using my, my magnet to pull these out. Alright, so I guess the next steps is really just to take each one of these shims out of these buckets. Okay, I'm completely and totally confused now. I've never been bad at math, I'll be honest, but this makes no sense to me at all. So when I do the measurements, okay, so this, first of all, this has a 4.0 printed on it. This has a 1 point, oh, not 4 point, but it has 4 and a 0. This has a 1 and a 5. This has a 5 and a 0, 5, 0, 5, 0. This one has, you can see this one pretty well. 4 or 5 it has on it. So let's take this as an example. So that's not millimeters, because from a millimeters perspective, that's about 2.3 millimeters. So I assume that that was like 0.045 inches, but it isn't. If I use my calipers, it's 0.965 inches. So yeah, I've got no clue at all how big these are. And the problem with using this is it's only accurate to 1 decimal place in the millimeters. No good. So then I thought, well, I'll go to my one with inches, and that's kind of where I've gotten all these measurements from. The 0.99, the 0.1, the 0.95, and the 0.965. And then, so I thought, well, that's fine. I'll just convert that to millimeters. So if you multiply that by 2.54, that gives me a measurement in excess of the 2.2 millimeters that I measured on that. I think it comes out to like 2.4 millimeters. It's like, what the hell? Oh, my brain hurts. Okay, so what I've done is I converted everything to from the inches on this better caliper, because I suspect this is a cheapy caliper. This is the equivalent of Harbor Freight. It's from Princess Auto, so I got to go with the fact that this is a better quality one. So I measured everything with that, got these measurements, converted those to millimeters as my current shim size, did my calculations, and then I came up with what's in red as the target shim size. And of course, you don't have everything to choose from in the shim, so I've gotten the closest ones. I've marked, so there is no 244, it's a 245, and this one from here will actually fit there, and so on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and calculate it back the other way, just to make sure I'm happy with what I think the expected clearance should be. Before I do that, I'm actually going to measure these shims with these calipers, and just to confirm that these are actually the right sizes, because what's stamped on it versus what you measure might be a little bit different. All right, so I think I got it all sorted out. Yeah, a lot of number crunching would have helped a whole lot if my metric calipers, the digital ones, were more accurate and 2 decimal places. But at the end of the day, I think I've got it all figured out. And yeah, so basically the old shims are at the top, and if this shim didn't change, so I just moved it down, this shim is actually going here. And then I've basically what I've done is I've measured each of the new shims in inches, converted that measurement to millimeters, compared that millimeter measurement back to the actual original value of the shim, understood the difference, gone back to the original measurement of the existing valve clearance to make sure that it gets me in the range that I need to be. So all in all, I think I'm okay. So I'm going to put these shims into these buckets and put them back on the bike. So it seems to be an easier and safer bet to put the shim on in the top of the valve there, because otherwise it becomes a bit of an ordeal. So what I want to do is I want to put the marked side up so that way it doesn't get worn off. So now all the buckets are back in. Next step is I'm going to put some lube, additional assembly lube on everything, and then see if I can finagle that exhaust cam back in there. So this is the part that was kind of worrying me a little bit. Everything is in. All the timing marks are lined up, except that everything is kind of rotated just a little bit. Okay, you see here how that is kind of raised up a little bit from the edge here. These marks where I put the chain, so I know the chain's in the right place. That's a little bit below where I want it to be. That's a little bit above where I want it to be. All right, so the caps are back on. I've got the all brand new bolts in here. All right, so I've got the bolts in. I'm just starting the torquing process here. I'm going to do it in a couple of stages. All right, so everything's torqued, but what I'm going to do now is I can't start monkeying with this too much until I get the tensioner back in there. Okay, I took a piece of scrap metal, and this is a little tool that I made. So the idea behind that is it fits in that little screw head way down inside there, and then once you tighten it down, you keep cranking it until this retracts, and then these little crosshairs on the outer portion lock into this outer. So this is the screwdriver for the center screw. You turn it, you twist it till this retracts, and then this part here, you kind of slot it in and engage in here in one of these crosshairs. So then you can kind of leave it in there. It keeps it locked, keeps this tensioner, this plunger back. You bolt everything in, and then you can pull that out and let this thing kind of retract back out and tension the chain. So the plans for that are right here. Wasn't too difficult to make, and a lot easier than kind of fishing around with a screwdriver in a very confined space. Okay, so there's the plunger. You wind that basically clockwise, and then you kind of stick it into the little slots like I said. So that should hold it in there until I get it back in the bike. So I did put a little bit of Permatex gray gasket maker on here. There was some in there before, so I imagine it was just a safeguard against leaks. I guess the next thing is I got to go now and go and double check all the valve clearances and see what the new clearances are. Yep. So everything is pretty much spot on. It's anything from 0.21 to 0.24, which is great because it's supposed to be 0.20 to 0.29. So I kind of try to land it somewhere in the middle, and I'm happy with that. All right, so I guess the next thing is to put the cam cover back on. Manual says a little bit of sealant in these areas right here. I did clean off the gasket, so I'll put just a little dab. Don't want to go crazy with the gasket maker, because the last thing you want is this thing kind of getting everywhere inside the engine and the oil galleries and all that kind of nonsense. So no silicone on this. Hopefully it doesn't leak. And generally speaking, silicone seems to be one of those things that's overutilized in many cases. So all right, so just starting to reassemble the swing arm, bits and pieces. Always a good idea to put a bit of never seize on here. So I cleaned up the chain slider. So I'm just going to find the hole. Could really use a new chain slider, but this one isn't too bad. It'll do. The other thing is I put spools on this swing arm as well. These are 12 millimeter, the 1.25 pitch, these bolts. Not easy to find. Occasionally, like these are Oxford, so they do make one that fits this swing arm, but nowhere near as common as some of the other sizes. I gotta crank that one in a bit further though. All right, swing arm. There's a sleeve inside there. All the bearings are greased. That's kind of back together. This pivot shaft here, whatever this is called, there's a sleeve in here. There's a shaft inside it. All that's been greased, and I put some never seize on these pinch bolts. So that's back together. Kind of getting even a little bit dirty here, but yeah, I'm gonna start to get ready to put this back in, and yeah, still got to assemble the back half of this, and then once I get the main frame mounted back on the engine, the swing arm is ready to go back on. All right, so I'm going to put the section of the swing arm back on here. Now, this is one of those things where I'm really not sure what the actual purpose of this piece is. I can only assume, just from its location and the fact that it's only on one side, that this has something to do with the chain, and maybe they were thinking that maybe when they do, I don't know, is it from proposed, were they ever endurance racing these things? And would it make a rear wheel change faster to have a section of the swing arm that you can remove to take the chain off the outside? I don't know. It's not to make chain removal any easier, because if it's a continuous chain, it's always going to be captive at the swing arm pivot. The only thing I can think of is is it a quick change rear wheel type of thing where you pop the chain off? I don't know. If you know the answer, stick a comment below and enlighten me and maybe others on why this removable section is here. Alright, so I just got this sitting on here at the moment. I'm just checking the clearance between the engine mount adjusters and the engine. They look okay. Got some never sees on this lower engine bolt, this engine mount. Again, I don't want to bang this in. I'd rather try to twist it in before I get the nut on here. I don't want to damage any more threads. It's the bottom one in, now the top one. What I'm noticing as I look down, what I'm trying to make sure I have here is these engine adjusting. There's like a threaded adjuster that basically clamps the frame to the engine, for lack of a better description. The one here on the right side could stand to be a little bit closer, so I'm going to, before I put the bolt in, I'm going to adjust that in. They'll get torqued once I get the rest of the engine mounts attached. All right, so the brake brace is back on. Everything is kind of never seized as far as putting, no need to grease it, but certainly put never seize on it. So I'm just putting a cotter pin in here for safekeeping. Boy, it looks like I've never even put a cotter pin in before. Good Lord. For fuck's sakes. Oh, for crying out loud. It's a little bit long, but it'll do the trick. Okay, so I've re-rigged all the tie-down straps here, because just strapping the engine down was fine to put the main frame on here, but now that I'm going to start putting the cradle on and other things, I just have to re-rig that. Otherwise, it's not, straps start to get in the way and all that kind of stuff. So. All right, it's looking just fine there, I think. Everything is nice and snug. And that's gonna wrap it up, I think, for this video. I think in the next video, we'll throw on the swing arm and maybe the rear subframe. We'll put on the steering stem, and maybe we'll get to rebuilding the forks. You see I have started some body work down here. There's more on that coming up in another video, although I'll try to minimize how much sanding of bodywork I'm showing you, because that's not interesting for anybody to watch. But anyway, and again, it's something that just has to be done. You can't get away from it, no matter how mundane it might be. And yeah, we're coming along. So thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you're enjoying the videos and you're coming back every week to see what I'm doing, please do consider subscribing. It is much appreciated. It does help the channel grow. I think my numbers have dropped off a little bit over the past month or so for some reason. Maybe things are not as interesting as they could be. But put your comments below. Tell me what you think of the project so far. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.